The electric SUV market is a very busy one, but Polestar thinks it has created a model which can stand above and present itself as something a little bit different, and that's this. It's the brand new 3. It's a car which goes up against vehicles like the Mercedes EQE SUV as a big, luxurious EV for families. And whilst this might have the same platform underneath as the Volvo EX90, it is in fact being pitched as a slightly sportier or hard-edged version. But is that the case? Well, we've come to Spain to find out.
The Polestar 2 has been Polestar's primary car on sale in the UK for a long time now, and now that the 3 has arrived, it needs to have that distinct lineage to tie the two together, while still establishing the 3 as a product in its own right. I think it's done quite well. The front end is recognisable as one of Polestar's designs, but it's more upright, and naturally because it's an SUV, it's got a little bit more presence than the standard 2. Around the back there's a full width light bar, which seems to be something you have to have in order to enter the modern EV segment, and the big alloy wheels add to the car's look overall. There are a variety of colours to choose from, though they all are relatively subdued. The white, of course, is quite classic and gives the Polestar more than a hint of Tesla-ish to it.
There's lots to like about the interior of the Polestar 3. What I think is interesting is that they've put some intuitive functions right there exactly where you need them. So we've got some shortcut buttons down the bottom which give you quick access to some of the driver modes, and it'll also remember some of those most used features. So for instance, if you're using Spotify a lot or other streaming systems that are available on this car, it'll remember that and it'll put them straight away right there, so you can get them each and every morning when you come into the car. Up front we've got a nice clear small dash, which I actually really like because it just gives you the information that you need, and then the gear selectors are up on the right hand side, which does help to free up a bit of space in the middle here for cup holders. There's loads of room down the bottom here, and there's also a handy little drawstring section which Polestar tell me is for putting wires and cables when they're not in use, so you can keep them there and you don't lose them anywhere in the cabin. The material quality is good, and in the centre you might notice that the screen, in difference to the Polestar 4, we've now got a vertical screen as opposed to a horizontal screen, and it's based on Android Automotive, so it's got all of those quick use functions like Google Maps already built in. There's no need to connect your phone, though you can do that if you want to. Because the Polestar 3 sits on a dedicated EV platform, it's been designed first and foremost to be a battery-powered vehicle rather than adapted from an existing petrol-powered one. And that's why we've got this really lovely flat floor back here, which opens up loads of space regardless of which seat you're in. Now, Polestar has said that this is going to be a dedicated 5-seater. Unlike the EX90, there won't be a 7-seater option, so you are strictly limited to this 5-seater layout. But when you are sitting here, you've got plenty of space for your knees, loads of room for your legs actually, and headroom is excellent, despite the fact that Polestar say that they try to lower the roofline of these cars to make them look a bit sportier. There's still acres of space, and the panoramic sunroof that you get in this car helps to increase that sense of space through more light coming into the cabin. It's also the only car that I've driven recently that has its own throw cushions, and if anything goes from my experience of throw cushions, you'll just be throwing these on the floor every time you drive the car before you put them back again. But it's a nice little touch if that's what you sort of like for, I guess, comfort reasons, but I can't see any other reason why you'd have throw cushions in your car. But I do like some of the accents in the back here. All the seat belts are yellow in traditional Polestar style, and we've got some nice deep door bins at the side and some independent controls for the heating and ventilation. In this car it's all physical as well. Difference to the Polestar 4, we've got proper physical vent controls rather than ones centred in the screen, and personally I just think these are much easier. You've also got 2 USB-C charging points for your devices. Overall this feels like a very family focused interior. The material quality is good, but it's overall the spaciousness which shines through here. Thankfully for a large electric SUV focused towards families, the Polestar 3 is able to offer a decent amount of boot space. In fact, it's got 484 litres of room here, and there's not too much of a load lip, which is going to make putting those heavier items in quite easy. I also like the fact that there's an extra 90 litres of boot space under here, and that doesn't have to be used for the cables either, because the Polestar 3 has a frunk at the front, which is one of my favourite features on an EV, because it means you can put the cables up there, and it means that you don't have to take all of the things in the boot out of the boot in order to get to the cables. So that's really practical, a great feature. The platform that underpins the Polestar 3 is one that's shared with the new Volvo EX90. Now what does that mean? It means that it's been developed both between Geely and Volvo itself, and that collaboration has produced something that feels actually very well resolved. This is a car that feels very well planted and nicely tailored to a mixture of driving, depending on whatever you're doing. Obviously, being a relatively large SUV, it's more family focused, but they've implemented some cool technology to ensure that it's still pretty good to drive. There's active torque vectoring, for instance, and when you drive this car around a sharp corner, you can feel the systems actively working to keep you on the straight and narrow, moving the power around. With a decent battery comes a decent range. You should get around 366 miles from a single charge in the Polestar 3, so that gives it some long distance ability too. But I think what really shines in this car, and we're riding on air suspension, which comes as standard on these first edition cars, is that it feels comfortable, refined and quiet. Electric cars often struggle to mask some of those high frequency noises like wind noise or tyre roar because you haven't got an engine getting rid of them. This car, there's none of those being apparent anyway, so you don't have to worry about a usually quiet interior being unsettled by things like road noise or wind noise. This is obviously a physically large car, but it manages to feel relatively small around you. It's not like your proportions or the corners of the vehicle are difficult to judge or see where they are. Rearward visibility isn't too bad, though it is slightly impacted by the rear seats, but you can look over your shoulder, and because of the fitment of the glass in the rear sections, it's not as bad as some of its alternatives. I think what really shines through is just how polished this car feels. It's like they've put a proper amount of development into making sure that it feels like a normal SUV. Polestar likes to talk about sportiness in its vehicles, and while I think quite a lot of that is, well, a bit marketing-y for me, this car delivers more of a comfort-focused experience, but it can be a bit sporty when you want it to. Most people, and let us know in the comment if you agree, but most people are going to buy these type of cars to use every day. They're not going to be hooning them around corners or switchback curves. And although this car can do it, and it doesn't feel out of water, it's in that everyday driving where it feels the most impressive. Both wind noise and road noise are kept well in check, and though these are riding on massive wheels, the ride quality is still decent enough. It's not being unsettled by those kind of low-level imperfections like a rough road surface or even smaller potholes. And we've driven it over some big bumps, some speed bumps, and the whole car manages to deal with it really nicely. On the motorway too, it has that settled float to it, which is really impressive and something that you don't often find on cars that both weigh quite a lot and have really big wheels. And that's been one of the biggest shortcomings of a lot of EVs, is judging how to manage that combination of weight, size and wheel size too. Everything's nice and logically placed in this cabin too. We've got quick shortcut buttons for the regen and also for the speed limiter, which you can switch off really quickly, and that's something that I just always like to do because it's quite annoying, to be honest, particularly when these systems pick up a road sign or a speed limit sign that's on a road adjacent to you, and then it suddenly thinks that you should be doing 30 when you're on the motorway, and it starts bonging and clanging. So I just switch that off, and it's good to have it right there. The overall screen display is good as well, and I like this compact gauge ahead of me, which just gives you that key information such as your speed and your range, and you can control certain elements of it through the steering wheel as well. But all in all, it just feels very usable and like a sort of family everyday SUV that just happens to look quite cool and a little bit funky, and that's really what you want from a new electric SUV. This is a very competitive market, but I think this car's polish is what definitely puts it above many of its rivals. I do think Polestar has done enough to stand out with its new 3 in what is a very busy segment. I think it's nicer to look at and it's nicer to drive than cars like the Mercedes EQE SUV, for example. And I think the interior is really cool too. Most importantly, it's been designed with space in mind, so lots of legroom and a decent amount of boot space make this a usable day-to-day option. As with most EVs, I think the one to go for is going to be the single motor version, as a dual motor just brings too much performance. You don't need it, and you'd rather additional range, and it's also going to bring the price down ever so slightly. But overall, in what is a very contested area, Polestar 3 does feel like quite a solid choice. Thank you for watching this new car review of the Polestar 3 for Motors. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and let us know in the comment section below if you like the look of this new Polestar, or do you think you'd go for the Mercedes instead? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors YouTube channel, and if you hit that bell icon, you'll get a notification each time we upload a new video.